All right. Well, this is the first video that I'm doing to kind of explain what earningslottos.com does, what it is, and how it can help you find the best earnings play every week. That is the main goal of the website, to find the best earnings play, the best movers every week. And so I have put together this deep dive calendar as a way to do that. So I'll just kind of, this video will just be explaining the deep dive calendar and how to read it, how to use it, and then I'll explain a little bit more of the EL score, the earnings lotto score for each stock, what goes into that score, and then how you can use the score to find the best mover for the upcoming week. So first, as you can see, this is just kind of the deep dive page. I put together a top 25 weekly strangle pick. So this will be the top 25 EL scores every week. You'll see a list of the top strangles based on high volume and open interest for those stocks. And that's just to give you a good idea of what other traders or what kind of the masses are thinking. You don't have to take that as gospel. You don't have to take those exact strikes and calls and puts yourself. But again, it's just to give you a good idea of kind of what the masses or what the public is thinking in terms of when it comes to high volume and high OI strikes. So that's that. Every quarter, I'll list the top 25 EL scored stocks and the bottom 25 EL scored stocks. So you'll see that in the Hall of Fame and the Hall of Shame. Those are going to be updated every quarter. So if we look at we can look at the Hall of Fame really quick, just to get a good idea of the top 25. The top three, as you can see, MongoDB, Elastic, and Deckers Outdoor. Those are three stocks that perform relatively well almost every earnings season. They have a 10% or more move in either direction almost every quarter. And so those reign supreme as the top three. It's just what the numbers show. This is just all data back. This is not like what I think. This is not what people feel are the best stocks to play in earnings. Like, this is all data back. These are the best stocks to play, at least in the past 2 years, because that's what I track is past 8 quarters performance. So at least in the past 2 years, here's your top 25 in terms of the best stocks to strangle, right? You want to buy an out-of-the-money call and an out-of-the-money put on each side for these stocks, because there's a good chance they're going to hit 10% in either direction and pay one of your sides. So there's the top 25. A lot of technology names. We can look at the Hall of Shame. And as you see, a lot of financial names. Amazon makes its way in the top. Not a very good mover on ER. I think all of these are kind of self-explanatory for people that have been trading earnings or kind of understand earnings season. These kind of make a lot of sense to you guys, I would imagine. Again, this is not what I think. I don't feel that Disney is a bad stock to play in earnings. I know it's a bad stock to play in earnings. The numbers say it's a bad stock to play in earnings, all right? Okay, JPM, same thing. I know it's a bad stock to play in earnings. Amazon, same thing. Anyways, so we'll go back to this week's data. Again, this video is not, I'm not going to go into like the actual specifics of what's reporting this week or what I'm looking at or what I think we should focus on. Again, this video is just purely for describing the deep dive page and describing or explaining what goes into the EL score. So first, you'll see on the deep dive, you'll see the top candidates. These are the highest ranked EL score and grade stocks over a share price of 25. So that's what the top candidates will be. As you can see, some really good movers from the past. DEC, Appfolio, CHRW, Charter has been a big one in the past. LRN, I think it dropped like 40 or 50% on a recent earnings. It's relatively new, but that's why it cracks the top 6. So you have that, and then if you want, you can look at the high scores. Anything under the share price of 25 is not going to receive a letter grade. I give everything an EL score so that we have an idea of, if you want to trade one of these on earnings, you have an idea of what to expect, because the EL score kind of will give you that. But keep in mind, the cheaper share price stocks, a 10% move on a $25 share is about a $2-ish move. So that's why you'll see when we go into the EL score breakdown why share price actually affects the EL score. But there's a sweet spot for that share price, and we'll look at it in a couple of minutes, in a little bit. But that's where you get the high scores. The high scores, no grade. These are if anyone likes the cheaper, so to speak, share prices, the stocks that are like $25 and under. If you like playing those, this is where you want to look. These are your top 6 options in the upcoming week. So let's look at one of the top candidates just to kind of, and then actually before we get into one of those, we'll look down. So if you want, I do have every day of the week down here in the bottom with every stock. Now this isn't every stock reporting. The stocks that I put into the deep dive, when I enter them in, they have to have an options volume of at least 1,000. So I don't want to put us on any stocks that are illiquid or anything like that. So no, these are not all the stocks reporting every week. Something to keep in mind. These are just liquid stocks where we can buy and sell options without the fear of not being able to sell our contracts. If you want, you can come in here. If you know of a stock reporting this week, you can come in here and search for it. And it'll show up. You can search the ticker. I think you can actually search the name too. Yeah, so both work if you're into that. All right, so we'll look at one of these top candidates just so you can get an idea of what to expect when you click into one of these or tap into one of these. So DEC is one of my favorite earnings stocks to play of all time. And so we'll look at that one. Little blurb for the company if you don't know too much about what you're looking at. I'll show you the EL score. There's the expected move based on options positioning, and then the amount of times that the stock has moved over 10% in an earnings reaction in the last 8 quarters, so 2 years. The 10 moves over 10% is kind of the crux of the EL score, although there are some other factors that will add or subtract to the EL score. But the bottom line is, we in earnings lottos, we want to look for stocks that consistently make 10% or higher moves on earnings. These are 10% these are 10% at the end of the day. So it's not to say that a lot of these stocks don't hit 10% intraday and then come down. I am only tracking after, at the end of the day move. So if at the end of the day the stock was 10% or higher, that's where it falls into this category. So just something else to keep in mind. I'm not tracking intraday highs. These are end of the day closing percentages. So DEC in the past 2 years, it's been a very consistent earnings mover, right? 7 out of 8 quarters, it's moved over 10%, either way, up or down on earnings. And so when we look at something like that, and I'm in options, if I, as an options trader, see something like that, I see that as a good opportunity to place an out-of-the-money call and an out-of-the-money put and trust, right? Not hope. We trust because we understand the data. We're going to trust that one of those sides is going to work and it's going to account for the other side and probably make more. So as you can see, this is the calculations that go into the EL score. Historical moves are the biggest piece to that. The expected move comes in a little bit. Share float is a factor. I will give an addition if the share float is smaller, and a subtraction if the share float is something wild, like 7 billion, 4 billion, 1 billion, something like that. The smaller the share float, the easier it is for that stock to move, right? There's less shares that need to be bought in order to move the price up and down. If you have something like Apple or Amazon or Nvidia, one of those stocks with billions of shares in it, it's going to take a lot more volume. It's going to take a lot more liquidity to move the share price up and down. So that's why the EL score gives an addition. If the share float is tiny, and it'll give a subtraction if the share float is massive. Share price is also another big key in what we're looking at, right? The higher the share price, the higher dollar amount is attached to a 10% move. So again, like we said earlier with the $25 stocks, a 10% move on a $25 stock is about $2. And a 10% move on DEC, which is, what is it, 99, so it's pretty much a $100 stock. A 10% move on DEC right now would be like a $10 move. And so obviously the $10, the 110 call or the 90p are going to be priced better than something closer to the money, right? They're going to be cheaper for us. And so that's what we're looking at with share price. So share price, DEC gets a plus 10 for that. And then recent momentum is something that I just kind of recently put in, but I think there is some value to keeping an eye on it. But what I'm doing now is I'm tracking the most recent 2 quarters. So let's say if last quarter the stock moved 15% or higher, but the quarter before that it did not hit a 15% higher move, it's going to get a subtraction because we're going to see that as a one-off, right? Like it could be a fluke. If a stock just moves crazy one quarter but the quarter before that it maybe moved 2, 3, 4%, we're going to look at those 2 quarters and go, okay, like one was really good, but the one before, maybe this is a fluke. Maybe, so that's why it's going to get a subtraction there. The thing with DEC though, because the historical moves factor so much into the EL score, again, that's kind of what gives it the most weight here. So even though it does get a 7-point subtraction, I think last quarter it moved 15%. I think the quarter before it was like 11%. It was so close. So again, like these numbers, they're there for a reason, but they can be very finite in some places. So I'll give you a blurb at the end of these EL scores just to give you a good idea. What I would suggest is if you are an earnings trader and you are focused on playing a stock, you're focused on playing it, before you actually buy into it, check earnings lottos, check the EL score. There really is a lot of value in this. So DEC is a high quality setup. This is a good candidate for volatility strangles. So again, getting an out of the money call and an out of the money put. If you are feeling, based on the chart or based on what you think fundamentally, if you think the call is going to work better than the put, buy more contracts on the call side, hedge it with the put, or if you think it's going to go down, vice versa. So that's that. You do get a little 90-day chart. And then I will provide options, strangles, ideas for every stock that I have listed here. These strangles are based on high volume and high open interest. And these are not the exact strangles that I would say or I would suggest to get, right? This just gives you a good idea, like before with the top 25 rank, this gives you a good idea of what other traders are feeling or thinking with this stock. So not really seeing anything out of the ordinary or here in this strangle option or area that would make me want to get the 110 call right away or the 90p right away. Again, just kind of giving you a good idea of what people are thinking. If you don't have a subscription to a service that provides flow or option strangle pricing or anything like that, this is the perfect thing for you. This is completely free and it's set up exactly for earnings. Very easy to read. So that's that for DEC. If we wanted to look at kind of a not as great of an opportunity, we could look at something like on Friday. I know that some of the gas companies are reporting, so oils. So like Chevron, for example, in the past 2 years, Chevron has not made a move over 10% in a post-earnings reaction. So if you're someone that is thinking about geopolitical factors or something, and you go, "Oh, I'm gonna really focus on Chevron or Exxon," before you do that, check the data. check earningslottos.com, and we will let you know. We'll give you our EL score, and then from there, it's up to you to make the decision. So, no historical moves over 10% for Chevron. A pretty low expected move. You don't really get a bump there. Share float is massive. 2 billion shares is a lot. Anything over a billion is a lot. It's just going to be hard to move the share price unless some crazy volume or liquidity comes in. It's a good share price, right? Like 166. That's a 10% move off that. 16, 12, 13% move, $20 maybe. So, yeah, great share price. But it just doesn't move. It hasn't moved historically. So why, if something hasn't proven that it can do it in the past, why would I want to spend my money on it now? It hasn't proven that, right? We can look at the calls and the puts for CVX. Again, this just gives you a good idea of what people are thinking. Me, if I'm reading this, if I'm thinking I want to trade CVX and I go here and look at the EL score and I see this, I see you're going against the data here. All right, I'm not going to get it. So that would help me avoid playing a really historically disappointing stock on earnings. So that's how to use the deep dive. That's how to read the EL score. You can sort by session. You can sort by EL score. Yeah. So play with the website. Let me know what you guys think. If it makes sense. If you think things should change. This is very much a work in progress. It's just kind of my personal project. But I want to help everyone. I want to share what I've learned and share what I know with everyone else that plays earnings lottos, and I want us all to succeed. I want us all to make money together. So that's the idea of earningslottos.com. That's why it exists, and yeah, hope everyone makes money. And again, let me know if you have any questions or improvements to the website, and hit some bangers.